Is former president and now spokesman for the Legal Services Coordinator for the St. Louis County Police Association. Good morning, Gabe Crocker. Can we turn Gabe Crocker's mic on? All right, there we go. All right, Gabe Crocker, have you been working all night?
I have. I wore my best white T-shirt in for you this morning.
That's what we used to see.
Well,
Don't
so
judge.
It's
Even
been
busy.
all night. You've been working all night,
Sure.
so we thank you for taking a couple minutes for us. First of all, let's talk about the what is the mood of the St. Louis County Police or the people you've spoken to about what's transpired over the last 12 hours?
Well, certainly. So just overnight, again, it's just shock, dismay, like every other law enforcement agency and every citizen in the United States. I mean, this is the very definition of a national tragedy.
Right.
I mean, police officers, despite all of the controversy, still occupy a special place in most people's hearts in this country. And that's something that is important for us to not forget. It's important, and law enforcement is important in this country. As I've said for 2 years on your show, McGraw, we're not perfect, nor is any profession.
Right.
But I can tell you that we're just shocked by the loss of these officers. I don't know what the latest update was. The last I had heard was 5 officers.
Right,
that were
5
killed.
officers, 7 now wounded.
Yes, and then
But
a couple of civilians.
we can get to the videos here in a second, but I want to focus on Dallas for a second. It seems like, and you were a veteran, you watched in horror here what happened in Ferguson, and not to equate the two, but it seemed like the protesters were working in conjunction with the police officers and having a very peaceful demonstration down there where the police officers were protecting the protesters to make sure everything was safe. And there was video of them working together, talking, camaraderie going on. And then to have these snipers come and sort of ruin the whole thing is even more egregious.
I think it's very telling, McGraw and Kelly. I think it's very telling that police officers, law enforcement agencies nationwide, and these particular groups, whether it be Black Lives Matter groups or other groups, have shown that the common sense folks in those groups, the people that are willing to come to the middle ground and not operate on the fringes, we can do this. We can work together. Of course, then we run into a situation like we had last night where you have most likely, and what I believe will probably be some fringe of one of these groups that may have targeted these law enforcement officers. That's where it's hard for us to make progress. Whether it's, again, and I know we'll probably briefly discuss the other law enforcement shootings that have happened in the last couple of days, but the politicians, I mean, you can just replay previous interviews. I'm saying the same thing. I'm not scratching any new ground here. The politicians are not helping. The negative rhetoric is not helping. We've seen it over the last 72 hours with some of these shootings that are involved, that law enforcement has been involved in, and it is these real, just dangerous statements by elected officials, politicians, and these talking heads, of which I guess sometimes I am one.
Right.
I always try to I guess, lead by example and say that I don't know all the facts. I don't know everything. And we have to, as American citizens, when we have these types of tragedies, we have to work together. I mean, and I think that what you saw, and you brought it up, the Dallas police working with the protesters, and what you saw was, for all intents and purposes, a relatively peaceful protest. I'm unaware of anything catastrophic
There's
that
been
happened
no
there.
reports of anything
and
other than
when you
peaceful.
have these calm, cool heads, yes, people are upset, but police officers, again, are tasked with this incredible responsibility of not only providing safety and security, they're also the targets of comments while they're doing this. They're protecting not only your life, but your freedoms, your First Amendment rights, all of that stuff. It's complicated, and these incidents do nothing to help us as a nation move towards any type of progress.
What are your thoughts as you watch the videos? Because to the untrained eye, to my eye, they're horrific. This one in Minnesota where the guy's pulled over, I mean, it's almost like a bad movie where he's pulled over for a broken taillight. He's asked for his driver's license. He supposedly does everything you're supposed to do, and the police officer clearly has lost control of the situation. He shoots 4 times. The man's dead. It's filmed. As a police officer, what are your thoughts, and what are other local police officers saying?
Okay, so just kind of examining, and of course, no argument between you and I about this, but I would look at the way you phrase that question.
Yes.
I've watched that video. The shooting is not caught on camera.
Right.
No.
The aftermath is caught on camera. So we can only start to make assumptions, which can be dangerous. I understand that the way that looks to the general public is very bad, as is the shooting in
Baton Rouge.
Baton Rouge, thank you. And again, they look very bad. So that shooting in Minnesota, I've only seen that video a few times. I don't know what happened, nor
Right.
do you, nor does anyone else. You do see an officer at that moment that is very panicked, but wouldn't you be? I mean, look at what has happened in our country. I mean, was he in fear for his life? Was he in fear of his life?
Right.
What happened there? And we don't know that. And then in particular with the shooting that occurred in Louisiana, I can tell you, McGraw, that my deepest, heartfelt sympathies go out to the family. I saw the press conference. I know the sadness that young man was feeling for his father, and I know the anger that law enforcement has felt in the last 72 hours for the way that many of the media outlets have really strung these police officers that were involved in that incident. What I see in that incident, in my humble opinion,
Right.
is a completely justified, albeit controversial, justified use of force.
The one in Baton Rouge.
one?
Absolutely, Baton Rouge.
Where they had him
Yes.
down, and the officer pulls the gun.
Yes, and if you look at that entire video, you can't see his hands. I mean, your favorite CNN person, Nancy Grace, was, screaming and
Okay.
weren't you booted off her show?
Yes, I
once?
was booted off her show,
I like
yes.
to mention that, but screaming and hollering and yelling about this thing, and I'm looking at it. I go, I don't see it. I understand that it looks bad, and that's. But the general public is consuming that video with knowledge that without knowledge that
Right.
law enforcement officers
but that's why you're here. Explain
Sure.
what you see that the common person doesn't see.
Okay, so I'll start at the time of the shooting and maybe work backwards
Okay.
just to make it interesting. What I don't see is his hands. Okay, and I hear verbal warnings. I know that there was some active resistance. I know that there was a 911 call. So we have a lot more information on this one than we do the one in Minnesota.
Right.
And so you have active resistance. You have rules and procedures in place that tell you as an officer when you can use pepper spray or your hands or a tackle or a fist or a taser. And so you see these officers deploy the taser unsuccessfully. What happens is you're relatively high up on a use of force scale there. Tasers are a notch below deadly force, sometimes considered deadly force by different agencies.
Right.
And so what you have there is these officers that are already relatively high up. You don't typically from that point go back down. It's already escalated to a point. Now you want to be able to do that, but in this case, you see the officers go down to the ground after the subject's tackled, and you again have all of that background information, the 911 call, all this stuff. It's caught on video, and then you see these officers, and one of the officers says he has a gun. Now at that point, I mean, you are talking split second, microseconds, hundredths of a second in order to make lethal, deadly force or non-deadly force decisions. And I can't say that I think pepper spray would have worked. I don't know if a taser would have worked, because if he did have his hand down, obviously the police officer had to see that firearm.
Right. Or has a better view of where his hand is as opposed to the person
anyone
with
in the
it. Right.
public. I can't deny that it's tragic, but when I see that video, I'm disgusted by the media coverage of that, because we have in this country a legal system, and these officers, just as anyone else,
Right.
have certain rights.
Right.
And there's also a civil system of justice in this country. O.J. Simpson innocent in one, O.J. Simpson liable in the civil trial.
Right.
I just use that as a
No,
simple
I hear you.
example, but that's the remedy here.
Yeah.
That's the remedy.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
As a black person in America, I have a cousin who is an LAPD officer. I have a nephew who wants to be a police officer. He's going through school right now. I fear for the black men in my family. And have for many years. That's just factual. I'm just being
in
honest.
law enforcement or from law enforcement.
Always, I fear if they are pulled over, what will happen? And on the other hand, I 100% support law enforcement. I respect law enforcement and everything they do. So what would you say to people who are listening to Black America in our community, to the incidents that have happened, and as far as law enforcement and the trust that Black America, many people in Black America have in law enforcement?
I would say in some cases that distrust is absolutely justified. And other times I think that mistrust may be exacerbated by some of the things that I've talked about this morning, where they don't have an understanding of use of force, or they don't understand police practices. I've, again, over and over repeated myself on this show about the communities that some of our, the minority communities, the schools, the education, the fatherless households. I've talked about all that stuff before. What would I say to them directly? I don't know. And maybe that's the greatest answer, Kelly. I mean, it's because I don't know what to say to them that could somehow flip a light switch and automatically trust police officers. Because I know there are a lot of non-minority citizens that don't trust the police as well. I mean, they come from all different backgrounds, all walks of life. It's a difficult topic, and I always am happy to talk about it.
Gabe Crocker, former president and now spokesman of the Legal Services Coordinator for the St. Louis County Police Association. Great questions and very important topic. Gabe, be safe out there. You're always welcome here to give your point of view, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, McGraw. Thanks,
safe.
Kelly.
7:29.